We have the latest news in the third-party external investigation into the huge brawl after the AEW All-Out media scrum. Plus, where does the heat between Bobby Fish and CM Punk come from? All this in today's AEW news. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of All Elite Wrestling and the fallout from the big brawl after AEW All Out, specifically after CM Punk's comments in the All Out media scrum continue. Of course, we know that everyone we can see in the picture right now is currently suspended by AEW, but we also know that there is going to be, or there is, an ongoing third-party external investigation to try and determine what actually happened, what actually went down in that brawl in CM Punk's locker room between CM Punk, Ace Steel, Kenny Omega, and the Young Bucks. Who started what? Who initiated what? Who threw punches? Who bit people? Who pulled people's hair? We know that an ongoing external third-party investigation is trying to determine this, and of course it was an investigation that was set up by AEW President Tony Khan to get to the end of, or to get to really the truth of the matter. We also know that CM Punk and Ace Steel, their AEW employment status actually does depend on the outcome of this investigation. So what's happened? What's going on? A lot of people are asking, what's going on? How long is this third-party investigation going to take? Who's investigating it? What do we know? Well, we do know at the moment that MJF is going to be interviewed via this third party. We also know that AEW's chief legal officer, Mega Parek, is also going to be interviewed to try and determine what indeed did happen, as they did actually witness the events. Now, unfortunately, for the investigator, their team, and those waiting on a final answer regarding what actually happened last weekend when it comes to the big brawl that happened at All Out, it will likely take a while. Basically, it's going to take a long time before we actually figure out what indeed did or didn't happen in Chicago on that evening. Now, this afternoon, or this morning, depending on where you are, PW Insider Mike Johnson reported that the third-party investigation into the brawl at All Out remains ongoing, with no possible end date for the investigation provided. Now, in the meantime, fans can expect all parties involved, including the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, CM Punk, Ace Steel, producer Pat Buck, head of talent relations Christopher Daniels, and talents Brandon Cutler, and Michael Nakazawa to remain off of television. Now, Punk, of course, is expected to miss time anyway after he tore his triceps in his AEW All Out World Championship main event against Jon Moxley. So Punk, in addition to being suspended, is going to be away for a long time, possibly around 8 months after undergoing tricep surgery last week. Now, the Bucks and Omega were also stripped of their championships last week alongside Punk in the anticipation of their upcoming absences. So if you expected not CM Punk, if you expected Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks to return this coming week on Dynamite, not going to happen. If anything, we don't actually know how long all of these people are going to be away from AEW for. We don't know if they've been suspended for a couple of weeks, like Eddie Kingston was when he had his physical altercation with Sammy Guevara backstage. But of course, that was a much lesser physical altercation than the one at All Out. We don't know if they're suspended for 30 days, 60 days, or just indefinitely. It might be a case, while AEW is trying to figure out what indeed did happen at All Out, we could see a situation where all those involved, even the producers that were trying to split things up, are suspended indefinitely until they determine an outcome of that entire investigation. So don't expect, obviously, to see CM Punk anytime soon, because of course he's injured as well as being suspended. But when it comes to the Bucks and Omega, don't expect to see them soon either, hence why they were stripped of their championships. Now, while he will remain outside of the ring while the investigation takes place, Kenny Omega appears to be, at least, still to be something on somewhat good terms with AEW, because Kenny Omega has indeed been spotted for the first time since that brawl at All Out. Now, of course, Kenny Omega's involvement in that brawl is somewhat, not disputed, but again, all of this is somewhat disputed when it comes to the finer details of what happened in Chicago. Now, if you believe some side of the story, Kenny Omega was bitten by Ace Steel, AEW producer and longtime friend and trainer of CM Punk. But also, one part of the story is that Kenny Omega only got involved because he was trying to remove Punk's dog Larry from the dressing room. And that led to Ace Steel getting involved because Larry was actually with Ace Steel's wife, who has a broken foot or something like that. The details are wild. Naturally, of course, Kenny Omega was nowhere to be seen this past Wednesday on Dynamite, as he and the Bucks were suspended and stripped of the AEW World Trios Championships, as AEW looks to put the pieces pieces together on what exactly happened in Chicago a couple of Sundays ago, but those looking for a good sign regarding Omega's AEW future can take solace in the fact he appears to be in Japan for the upcoming Tokyo Game Show convention. Now, if that is the case, that would be a positive sign for his AEW future because he's going to be in Tokyo promoting and hyping and unveiling AEW's console game AEW Fight Forever. Now, Omega appears to be in Japan, judging from a tweet by Japanese wrestling apparel company Heyo Ming, which tweeted a video of Omega in their offices. Now, also happy to see Omega in Japan is Yuka Sakazaki, the AEW/Tokyo Joshi Pro Wrestling star who was recruited to the promotion by Omega when AEW was formed in 2019. Now, the Tokyo Game Show Convention, or TGS for short, is scheduled to begin on September 15, which of course is in a couple of days' time. It's a few days later on this week, and will feature, of course, AEW Fight Forever, the promotion's upcoming video game. Now, Omega has long been scheduled to appear at the convention, representing AEW prior to the incident following AEW All Out last weekend. Now, his presence in Japan and at the upcoming convention could indeed suggest that Omega isn't expected to face severe punishment in his role in the brawl, because you would think if Kenny Omega's in really hot water or in a bad space when it comes to All Elite Wrestling, why would they have him promote the game at the upcoming event? However, on the flip side, Kenny Omega has been instrumental in the game. He was very hands-on in the development of it. He spent a lot of time ever since he really, joined the company, and even the conversation about a console game was brought up. He said he wanted to make it the best wrestling game ever, or the best wrestling game since No Mercy. Whether or not it can be that remains to be seen. We'll have to wait and see. But that looks to be what Kenny Omega has been trying to do. And again, he's been heavily involved in all of the development for all of that. So maybe it's a case of AEW saying, well, it would just be difficult for him not to appear there, so we can have him appear there, but you can't talk about All Out, you can't talk about what happened, you can't talk about being bitten or having your hair pulled, or what CM Punk said about you, and what CM Punk said about Hangman Page and the company, and XYZ. You can't talk about any of that, and I would think that probably is going to be the case. It is kind of wild, isn't it, that you could have someone who's actively suspended from the company out there promoting a video game that you are heavily involved in, representing the company whilst you're unveiling that video game. And that just goes to encapsulate, I suppose, the mess that is AEW right now, right? You've got someone in Japan, and Kenny Omega, of course, look, his legacy in Japan is huge, and his legacy in the video gaming world is huge as well. Many people, I don't think people realize that I speak to people that aren't wrestling fans who know who Kenny Omega is. You know, they'll know who Kenny Omega is, not because of the wrestling, they'll know who he is because of the gaming. And that's why he's going to be so important at that event. So it is a really odd situation, though, on the face of it, really, isn't it? That you've got someone, again, an executive vice president, even if that's it's just in title only and doesn't really have any role or responsibilities that come with that. You've got an executive vice president who's actively suspended from the company. He's not appearing on television because he's suspended, out there in Japan promoting the upcoming, the company's first ever console video game at an event whilst they're suspended. It's kind of wild. And bear in mind, on the cover, arguably the biggest face, the front and center person on that cover of the video game, alongside everyone else, but the biggest and front face on that cover is also your former world champion, who's also suspended, that the EVP who's there promoting the game was fighting with just several days ago. They're both suspended. One's out through injury and might never come back to the company, pending an investigation, which is ongoing. So just chaos, absolute chaos. And when you do take a step back, I know as we get further and further away from events that happened at All Out, you kind of, I guess, get used to it, or the shock kind of wears off. But occasionally I found myself doing this as well over the last few days. Like, you take a step back and you think, like, what on earth happened? What on earth happened? What a mess. When it's happening in real time, of course, you're shocked and you go, this is crazy, and people are talking about it, this is wild, and you're trying to establish details. But again, when you do take a step back and really look at that picture as a whole, you do go, what a mess. What a mess AEW is in. And I know they somewhat recovered by having a decent Dynamite last week, and they crowned new trios champions, and they've got another tournament. But just what a mess. What a mess they find themselves in. And the fact that when we're talking about this report earlier on, you say all of those people that you can see on the screen right there, they're all suspended. And one of the EVPs is out in Japan promoting the game, though, even though he is suspended. That is just, it goes back to my point before. It's a real lack of leadership by Tony Khan. A real lack of leadership. And I know that he did what he had to do on Dynamite this past week, and I commended him for that. That's what I thought was the right route to go, and him appearing as a pre-record and not totally addressing things, but moving things on. But it's still unbelievable, really. When you really think about it, it's still absolutely wild. And what they're going to do for the video game, I don't know. For a lot of things, I don't know. And as we spoke about, this investigation clearly is ongoing. It's not going to be done quickly. It's not going to be completed quickly, clearly, because you're trying to... It's like any other investigation, whether this was a legal case or a civil case or just, an internal third-party investigation. It's very, very difficult to determine what indeed actually happened when you've got so many different people saying different things and you've got so many different side of things. I don't know if we'll ever know truly what actually happened. We'll have different side of things and we'll have different accounts, and and this is what people don't understand as well. When you look at, say, the Elite side of things and CM Punk's side of things, they both think they're telling the truth, and they both, in their mind's eye, are telling the truth. They're not lying. They're not making stuff up. They're saying what they think happened. But in reality, the reality of it and the truth can be far different from their perception of events. And that's when, having independent witnesses like MJF, like Mega Parek, or other people involved that were there, that's why it's important. That's why it's important to, as what they're doing right now, video interview every single person involved and start to connect the dots. Oh, they said this, this is similar to what they said, that's a bit different from what they said, and start to piece together a rough approximation of what probably happened. And my general feeling is, honestly, that it doesn't look good for CM Punk. I don't see, honestly, a situation how Punk really truly remains with the company at this point. I think, again, almost a positive for him in AEW is that he's out of action for such a long period of time, because this is just a mandated and enforced cooling off period, really, when you think about it, right? He's got 8 months. He's not going to be a case of, is he going to be back in Dynamite in a couple of days, right? He's not going to be back on TV anytime soon. So maybe they can smooth things over in this period of time. However, what I would also say is the last time that Punk was away from television for a couple of months, as in a few months ago when he had his broken foot, he came back and he was even more angry. And that was just a couple of months. What could happen when he comes back after 8 months? If he comes back after 8 months, he'd be seething, isn't even the word. So... But on the flip side, it's pro wrestling. You can turn a shoot into a work, and you can make a lot of money doing it. And arguably, it would be what AEW really needs, is that big shot in the arm. But they're not going to get it for a long time anyway. So that's the latest when it comes to the investigation and the events at All Out. Of course, if we hear any more, we'll talk about it here on the channel. Speaking of Punk, though, we know his heat with Bobby Fish. Bobby Fish been doing a lot of interviews, hasn't he? Saying how much he hates CM Punk and how he could really beat him up in a shoot fight. Well, go on, Bobby. Now, in case you hadn't noticed, Bobby Fish isn't a big fan of CM Punk. Now, Fightful, Sean Ross Sapp has provided some more details as to why. We know that Bobby Fish has done interviews explaining why he doesn't like CM Punk and the issues surrounding it, saying that Punk was a fraud, he wasn't an MMA fighter, and that Punk's attitude after they had a match in October last year was the reason why, and Punk was really... I don't want to use the word because I want to be monetized in this video, but he was a bad guy to him backstage, and after that they had a falling out and this, that, and the other. Now, whether it be that what Fish claimed, and it was Punk's attitude backstage, his offense, or anything else, Fish began taking aim at the AEW talent. Specifically, Fish claimed to NBC Boston that CM Punk was a blank after the October 2021 match that happened early in Fish's run in AEW. However, Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful is reporting there's much more to this story, as is always the case with pro wrestling. Even backstage, detractors of Punk reached out to Fightful and following Fish's interview and subsequent stories. Now, Grapsody's Will Washington tweeted out a clip, and I think it's really important. I think it's really a good bit of business here that Will Washington did. when you hear someone do these interviews and you hear them say some things, we have a sort of weird reaction of human nature just to believe it because someone says it, and we want to believe the best in people. We want to assume that they're telling the truth. The issue is that people don't always tell the truth, or as I said previously, they tell their version of the truth. And if you go back and watch the match that Punk had with Bobby Fish, you can probably understand why CM Punk might be a little bit upset with him after the match. Now, in the finish of the match, it sees CM Punk hit Bobby Fish with the GTS. Now, as part of the match, CM Punk's leg and knee was worked over extensively. So if he was to hit Bobby Fish with a GTS, it would hurt his knee. And it would take time for him to crawl to the cover and get to the cover. So that's what he did. He hits the GTS, he takes his time, crawls and crawls and crawls, covers 1, 2, 3. But as the referee counts 3, like literally it's 3, Bobby Fish tries to kick out. It's the classic Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania with the Ultimate Warrior. It was 2. It was 2, damn it. It was like that. And if you'd guessed that Punk wasn't happy about that and what Bobby Fish did in that match, it seems you'd be right. Many have told Fightful that was indeed the catalyst of their poor relationship. Now, several people who remembered being backstage at the match were confused as to why he would do that, knowing it wouldn't likely go over well. One veteran relayed the message to Fightful. They noted that it took CM Punk a long time to get the pin, but he was actively doing that to sell for Bobby Fish in doing so. They're told after that there wasn't much communication between Punk and Fish. And if that is the case, if Bobby Fish is upset with CM Punk's attitude because after the match he called him out and said, why would you do that? That's bad. Then I side with CM Punk on that one. Clearly, to me, Bobby Fish doesn't like CM Punk. That's the way I perceive it. He didn't like CM Punk before this match because it's clear what Bobby Fish perceives himself as. He's an MMA guy. He said it in the interview. I've been an MMA fighter. I've done MMA since I was a kid. And CM Punk, when he went to the UFC and he got the crap beaten out of him twice because CM Punk isn't a UFC fighter, he's certainly not an MMA fighter, he's a bad one at that. And CM Punk trying to portray and do this MMA stuff in the ring, for whatever reason, that offends Bobby Fish. And that offended Bobby Fish. And he doesn't like it. That's the grudge he holds against CM Punk. So when they had that match and Punk was doing what I think is just logic. I mean, again, this is what's wild about pro wrestling nowadays is that logic doesn't exist anymore. Because if you're working a match and your finishing move is a knee to the face, which again, I know it wasn't actually Punk's move. He took it off Kenta, which again, Bobby Fish has a problem with. But he does a knee to the face. And you've been working on his leg and his knee, shouldn't he sell that? If he just goes to the cover straight away, 1, 2, 3, that doesn't make any sense. There's no logic in that. So yeah, he takes his time to get over there and do the cover, but to kick out at 3 of, oh, he only just beat me, who do you think you are? In reality, really, who do you think you are? Take the pin. You're a tag team guy. You're a tag team guy facing a main event level guy in the company, and he's hit you with his finish. It doesn't matter how long he crawls over. And I know some people say, oh, that buries Bobby Fish. How much offense did he get in that match on CM Punk then? He got a ton. He beat the hell out of him because that's the finish. He struggled. Oh, he just beat him. He gets put over in that way. To me, it just seems like Bobby Fish had a problem with CM Punk going into that one. And he kicked down. If I was CM Punk, I'd be annoyed too. I'd go, what the hell was that? Especially, again, if that's not something that's been determined beforehand. If they, with their agent or their producer, whatever you want to call them, or just between them two, they're experienced enough. If they said, okay, I'm going to hit the GTS, but my legs hurt, so I'm going to crawl. I'm going to get the 3 count. And then Bobby Fish says, what if I kicked out at like 3 and, 3.1 or something like that? And Punk says, okay, then that's fine. But if you haven't cleared it with the guy, do you think that would be acceptable in any other company with anyone else? No, it wouldn't be acceptable. And I'm not saying CM Punk's John Cena or anything like that, but, he's a big name. People try and push down CM Punk's, status in pro wrestling. But I was thinking this the other day, like this was a guy that was, he's main eventing things with John Cena. He was main eventing. He was WWE champion for a really long time. Yeah, you wouldn't have that. And if Bobby Fish was on the main roster in WWE, and he's working over Roman Reigns' shoulder the entire match, working over his shoulder. And then Reigns hits the spear on Bobby Fish, but his shoulder's really bad. And he crawls to the cover. You think Bobby Fish is kicking out of 3.1? Of course he's not. Like, to me, I thought it was, when I see stuff like that, I go, wow, this now actually sounds a bit like sour grapes. And I don't deny, and I don't doubt for a second that CM Punk can be incredibly abrasive and difficult to work with. There's a common thread in CM Punk throughout his career in all of this. But once you start to see things, you go, it looks like someone just doesn't like CM Punk. That's my thought on it. Anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts on today's AEW news stories in the comment section below. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right-hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.